skills. So again, we have Kanban, we have Operate. And within Operate, we have the skill of basic participation all the way down to the skill of a facilitator of a Kanban system. Each of these skills were decomposed by observable behaviors. So maybe every skill has 4 to 10 of these observable behaviors that are very, very tactical and actionable. Participation. Go move tickets consistently during the time that we are observing. Go to the majority of stand-ups or have somebody else go in your place. Don't be disruptive. Done. Facilitation. Run the stand-ups. Run the replenishment meeting. Run some of these other meetings required to actually do some root cause analysis. And we would watch. And then over the course of the watch phase in our Kanban system, because I showed you the Kanban system earlier on, we would actually really just start looking at these people, saying, where are they showing this behavior? And I'm going to be perfectly honest. Sometimes we weren't as disciplined as we should be about checking off every single thing every day. And then the group would meet at the end of the watch period and say, well, who exactly did observe that behavior? Who was actually displaying that behavior? We'd move these people along. As long as that data stays private, that's okay. Now, as soon as that data becomes public, you need to take a very, very different approach. So this is all in the context of we're the only people really looking at this data. Even our executive stakeholders haven't looked at it. It's really been kept private. I'm going to move into some real minimum viable changes and some of the pivots we did. So as we started this transformation, and Alexis Hoy's here, it's his fault that we did this. We started with doing a Kanban agile hybrid. And so we are going to go and help teams that were already on large projects break up their work into stories using story mapping. We're going to do agile estimating and planning with the Michael Cohn planning cards. We're going to put some iterative style minimum marketable features in there. Maybe even do some class responsibility card modeling and support them if they wanted to do some other practices. We went off. Each of these are 3 different minimum viable changes because that's how we track different groups. Because we know that just because a tactic works on one group doesn't mean it's going to work on another group. And we basically did all the modeling and workshops that we needed to do, and we sort of said, MVC 1, story mapping. Okay, our assumption there is that these guys are going to be able to pick up story mapping, run with it quickly, and it won't be overly consuming of our effort. MVC 2, set up the Kanban board. MVC 3, operate. Each of these is separate MVC. Similar assumptions. Not a lot of effort. They'll be able to do it. They'll be able to do it quickly. These things were successful we've got a couple of core really experienced guys now who are really taking this, but the effort was massive and the time was really, really, really long. And if we were to look at an 8-month horizon, we're like, we'll be 5 years here before everybody becomes agile. It's just not going to happen in time. So we pivoted. And our first pivot is, we're going to go back to basics. We're going to pick up the David J. Anderson Kanban book, and we're going to start with what you know. So a lot of people here will probably say, well, no kidding, why didn't you do that in the first place? Again, I blame Alexis. So we started going and saying, this is a functionally siloed organization. They've got a development team, they're all in one building. They've got, one floor. They've got a maintenance team, which is on the same floor, but the other side. They've got testing, which is 4 floors down. They've got intake, analysis, and solutions and designers. They're somewhere else. Enterprise architecture somewhere else. We're not going to fix that. We are going to go and we're going to Kanbanize that. So let's go and Kanbanize everybody's functional board, and we'll put intakes in everybody's Kanban system that comes from another board, and we'll have outputs from other places. That actually worked pretty well. People took to Kanban really, really fast. So much so that Kanban boards are popping up all over the place. And I believe Costa, who's a client here, can attest that facilities is now issuing a general edict. If they see one more Kanban board pop up, they're going to tear them all down. So it's a real interesting war we're having with the facilities department right now. They are your number 1 enemy, guys, just so you know. It's facilities. You got to nullify those guys first. The problem was that the management and executive teams were still not able to properly participate in this Kanban transformation, and there was an overall abundance of inventory in the system that none of the functional managers could do anything about. At the same time, I was going to these executive transformation meetings, and they were crying out for help. They had a whole lot of issues they needed to solve, and we're like, don't worry, Kanban's going to solve your life for you. And you know what? It clearly wasn't solving their lives quick enough or fast enough. So we did what's called a customer pivot. So A customer pivot is basically taking the idea that you're going to go and still do the same tactics, but you're going to go into an entirely different market segment. So let's go borrow that notion, and we're going to do Kanban for executives. It's for executives, it's for those senior managers, and we're going to treat them and the CIO as an actual team. So we created this, probably the biggest Kanban system I've ever seen. It's still not fully populated as of this picture, but it now is. It's about 11 feet high by 16 feet wide, and it's got every single piece of work on that organization. Supplier management's in there, operational support is in there, enterprise architecture, you name it, it's there, and we've given a zone for each of these guys. And anything that's greater than a month goes on this board. So smallish kind of, release type things, enhancements, to those large, big white whale projects, they're all on this system. And the first thing the CIO did when he saw that, well, first he swore. And then he sort of said, why is everybody doing so much at the same time? It's a 250-person organization, and there was probably over 200 tickets on this thing. So you really know that there's a problem, and the visceral reaction was exactly what we wanted. So MVC1 was, people are going to be able to actually get work on the board and be able to respond and engage. And that was kind of like maybe 40% of the people actually got their work on this system. MVC2 was, we're going to go create a risk issue and problem board right beside this board. And we're going to run stand-ups based on all the risks, issues, and blockers that are generated on this board. And then we're going to go and do status reports afterwards so that everyone can see it. It's a nice self-serve model. And the uptake increased significantly because of that. We then did another MVC where we put this on Lean Kit Kanban and then announced that to everybody. And then under the hoods, our change team basically said, okay, so what we're going to do is anytime someone changes something on the board, we're going to go update the electronic board, which notifies everybody across the organization. And every time somebody goes and changes the electronic board, we're going to go change the physical board. Kind of like a concierge service, It's like, hey, we're executives, we're managers, we're used to having stuff done for us. Let's go be this underlying Kanban support team. Lean startup guys tend to call it, it's kind of like the monkeys in the back room making the system work or making the product work. So we were the monkeys making that system work. Knowing that it's not sustainable, but we're not trying to get to sustainability right now. We're trying to get to what's the way that we're going to have actual validated learning that's going to change people's behavior. And people's behavior did change. We're now in the process of introducing the next minimum viable change, which is we've actually put a sizing model on all those tickets. We're going to put a capacity model in place, and we're starting to limit WIP. And the CIO has put a general order out that we're cutting inventory by half, which is a pretty good thing. So we're actually already starting to get WIP down, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll actually start seeing some flow going. We haven't gotten to flow yet anywhere, really, if you think about it, and we keep putting these MVCs out to say we're going to get some real flow going out of this system, and we're going to keep experimenting as we do that.
Can you give me a better sense of scale? How big are those tickets?
In terms of size, or how many millimeters is the ticket actually? No, I'm just kidding. So the smallest ticket on here would probably be about 3 weeks, one person's worth of work, and we consider that kind of a tiny. And we t-shirt size these things, by the way. And then the largest ticket on here is a multi-month kind of 9-person, 11-month plus kind of extra large. And so what we're doing is, because of the disparity in the size of the tickets, the way we're trying to actually limit WIP is it's not just every ticket is one WIP. The people load of the ticket actually counts against your WIP. So if we have 40 developers, they have a WIP of 40, and if an extra large drops in there, well, they're going to lose a 9. If a tiny goes in there, they'll lose a 1. And so basically that's how we're trying to run this system. We're saying, intake should be about 5% of the work. Analysis is 25% of the work. That's, some X of this, 250-person organization. Let's go and put WIP limits across the system. And so we'll see how that works, because that thing's just being introduced now. Yes, sure.
So are you moving away from the model of, when you're first coming up with your WIP, you take the size of the team, double it, and subtract 1? Because it sounds like you're just 40 team members and WIP is 40.
Well, no, I'm just trying to make the calculation simple. We doubled it. We didn't -1 because at this size it's, so we did double it because we think double WIP is a reasonable thing to do. And then we tried to calculate what we thought throughput would be, and we halved it, just to make some numbers that are reasonable that people can get to. So yeah, we did follow that formula.
And then you're coming up with a standard based on the type of work or the
Yes,
size of the work.
the size of the work.
Taking that amount of work off.
We're just starting to establish another MVC, which is a Kanban synchronization meeting, which is something you probably need to do at the enterprise level. And so twice a week, 2 hours a week, all of the functional managers get together, and they act as a Kanban team, starting moving tickets around along the board. So again, we're just starting to do that, but we think it's I think in a nutshell what we're trying to say here is Kanban is a great way to start at the executive and management level to look at the macro perspective. And you really get some really interesting behaviors when we do that. Procurement was getting blocked by legal. They couldn't get this RFP through, and legal wanted some, I don't know, some specialized writing and information in it. The CIO goes to our stand-ups once a week at random, and he literally walked in and said, no, I don't think so. We've already talked about that. Give it to me. And so the CIO's taking blockers and resolving them same day. So really, really neat behaviors around issue escalation and resolution, managers talking to each other, helping teams get unstuck. So this is really actually probably the minimum viable change that I'm most proud of right now. Is there any other questions on the slide before I get to the next one? Yeah, sure.
What sort of turnover are you looking for? How many people are going to roll out of that management team and out of the team inside the organisation at this time of change in terms of people wanting to leave?
1/3 of the management team is new to the organization right now. So there was a significant restructuring that happened right before we got into this transformation. A lot of new managers were brought in areas that they didn't have. They didn't have, line managers who are business facing, for instance, by line of business, and so they said we need line managers who are line of business based. Let's go put that in. They had a lot of other managers that were doing non-IT functions. There's a history in this organization of the business asking IT to do something, and they usually bring a body. And IT would go, well, sure, yeah, we'll do that. And if you saw the number of things this organization was doing that was non-IT related, you'd be shocked. And so they had to really restructure things just to get some normal level of sanity together. So they did a lot of this kind of reshuffling and moving people around. They didn't let go a lot of managers, but they certainly moved them around and brought in a whole bunch of new ones. So we're hoping, because it's new blood in there as well as old blood, that people aren't going to, kind of leave. Some of the old people within this organization are actually doing really well. One of those Kanban functional boards that I showed there, we gave it to the development manager, and she was like, we thought she was going to be the most resistant to change, and she loves the visibility and the accountability that she now can see, because before she was micromanaging everybody and always having to defend her team from people coming in. And now I'm just getting her to put stuff in queues, and she's like, great, I don't have to worry about this anymore. So it's working pretty well. So everyone was talking about how we're going to render this data, or if we would render this data. Again, this morning there was a great presentation by Leighton Reed around the gamification of work. And so we've experimented, or I should say we are planning to experiment with the gamification of this transformation. The first thing we have to do is take ourselves out of the role of judge. We can't be giving behavior points for people. We can't be awarding people skills, because then it's going to get some really bad behavior. So what we want to try to do is allow people to kind of, through the acquisition of observable behaviors, get skills, and we'll see the system ourselves. And then once someone in the organization has that skill and has those change or learning points, they can now go give it to somebody else. And so what we're hoping is that after we see the system with a couple of people who have already acquired the skills as a result of the transformation, that they're going to be known for having those skills, and anybody else who wants to have greater involvement in the transformation can go to them and say, well, look at me, I'm in front of a stand-up all the time. Look, I'm moving tickets, I'm doing this stuff. The other person can say, sure, I agree, and then pass that skill or those points on to that person. He's now got that skill. The person who gave the skill has now lost his points because he's given them away, and if he wants to go give a skill to somebody else, he's got to go earn some more. There might be some notion of an area effect attack, where if you get enough skills, you might be able to mass do a whole lot of people. You could, yes, I do read comic books when I was a kid, I admit it. And it's obvious from this that I played more than one role-playing game in my life. But the idea here is what we're trying to do is we really think that this, very, very concrete, actionable framework that allows people to know how they can move forward with the objectives of an organization can work if you do two things. The first thing you need to do is make sure that the makers of this kind of system are not giving out the points, because then it's complete favoritism, it's complete judgmentalism, you get all kinds of bad behavior. The second is you need to figure out a way for the people who are involved in this system to be able to see the information or change the structure of the system on their own. So yes, we came up with a whole lot of skills that we think are important to the organization. We said, here's the observable behaviors, but you've got to find some legitimate way for users of the system to see the content. One of them that you don't see here is we're going to have what we call